Welcome students of Form 3, but also Form 4 and Form 5. This could also be helpful for you. I'm going to talk about this question that is up there, and it's about explain in around 4 phrases, can be 5, yeah, but no less. I think that's not enough. What historians mean, yeah, when they say, Ordinanta Bisa, the most obvious transformation of the Caribbean was human. So after 1492, and the arrival of the Spanish and the Portuguese, and after that the Dutch, the French, the British. What do historians mean when they say the most obvious transformation in transformación obvio tabata humano? E transformación obvio, más obvio tabata humano. The most obvious transformation was human. What do they mean by that? Yeah. Here we see the Caribbean. We don't have mainland Caribbean, but this gives an image about the world where people like Christopher Columbus and later on Alonso de Ojeda, where they arrived in. And we see already that one change was also the nature of the Caribbean, plantations, cutting down trees, and also bringing actually palm trees, coconut trees from the east, from Asia, and planting them everywhere in the Caribbean. Those are very visible now. When we look at the Caribbean and we say that the most obvious transformation in transformación más obvio tabata humano, then we have to refer to the fact that when the Spanish arrived in the Caribbean, it was inhabited by Amerindians. Amerindians were already living there. That's a strange word, by the way, because it consists out of Amer and Indians, and those are the Indians living in America, wrongly named by Columbus in 1492. But we name them now Amerindians. So when the Spanish arrived in the Caribbean, it was already inhabited by Amerindians. Yeah. And this island, what we call Hispaniola, to the west being Haiti, and to the east being the Dominican Republic, like you can see above, it was inhabited by both the Taino and the Kalinago. Both of them lived on that island. So mentioned by Columbus and Spanish priests are the Taino and the Kalinago. They both lived on that island. Yeah. So we see the transformation from being in the beginning the place where the Amerindians lived. Yeah, those two people lived there, those two groups of people lived there, and after the arrival of the Amerindians, better said, after the arrival of the Europeans, tens of thousands of Amerindians died. Yeah, so Columbus and Spanish priests are mentioned e Taino e Kalinago, because of the germs, e Germanan, yeah, the flu, yeah, of coming by the gripe, by the flu. In Dutch we call it de griep. It was passed over to the people in the Caribbean, the Amerindians, and tens of thousands of them died because of the Germanan and because of the griep común. Because of the common flu, their bodies, no tabata resistente, their bodies were not resistant against these germs, and next to the fact that they had to work very hard in the encomienda system, next to that they were maltreated by the Spanish and the Portuguese in the Spanish encomienda system, that actually had to convert them to Catholicism, to Christianity, and actually had to treat them well, but they also often were treated like this by the Spanish nobility. Yeah. And next to that, we also have the germs killing off the Amerindians by tens of thousands, because their bodies, no tabata resistente, their bodies were not resistant against the flus that the Europeans have had for hundreds or even thousands of years on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. So the Amerindians were dying, and a few decades later, yeah, varios décadas después, yeah, varios décadas después, a few decades later, the Europeans connected the African slave trade to the New World. So in the last video we saw that Gillian in the 1450s brought the first 200 African enslaved people to Portugal. So in the 15th century already a connection was created, a slave connection between Africa and Europe. And just a few decades later, after Columbus, after 1492, the Europeans connected the African slave trade, which you can see over there in red, with the Caribbean, with North America, and with South America. So after the Europeans came to the New World, came to the Caribbean, came to North America, and came to South America, a few decades later, at the end of the 16th century and during the 17th century mainly, the Europeans connected the African slave trade to the New World and created a forced migration, kidnapping, buying from West African rulers enslaved people, buying from them war prisoners, prisoners of war, or people who were in debt, and transporting those people out of migration forza, forced migration, and transporting through the Middle Passage those people to the Caribbean, to North Africa, and also South America. To North America, and to South America. So the most obvious transformation in transformación más obvio tabata humano. I hope you understand now that because of Columbus and all the Spanish, the Portuguese, the French, the Dutch, and English that came after him, a transformación más obvio tabata humano, because of the killing off of the Amerindians, because of the germs and a encomienda system that killed tens of thousands of them, the Europeans that came to colonize the Caribbean, and that they connected the African slave trade to the New World and transported millions of Africans across the Atlantic and brought them to North America, the Caribbean, and South America. I hope this was a clear video, and goodbye. Hope to see you soon during